Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to a new video. This is something I've been wanting to do for a little while. It's something that I've had a few people come up to me and ask me about, and it's something that I would have wanted to have had when I was learning to drive and I was taking my driving test a few years ago now. Basically, this video is going to be the top tips that I'd give you to passing your driving test in the UK. If you're from the US, the system's completely different, so I'm sorry. You might be able to transfer some tips across, but I really don't know exactly how it works. For the UK, the driving test system works by getting your theory test done, and then you go and do a practical. The theory test has a hazard perception section and a just writing section. But this video is going to be more for the practical test only. One thing I've got to preface this video with is that the tips I'm going to give you are for passing your driving test and not necessarily things I'd recommend you doing for driving in the real world. It might sound kind of strange, but the driving test has one set way of driving, and then there are more safer set ways of driving that you can look up. Today we're just going to be talking about what you're going to have to do to make it easier to pass your test, so keep that in mind. This video, take every video you see with a pinch of salt. That's the one thing you've got to do. You've got to add advice from every video you see, every person who gives you advice, and just work out what's best for you and what works for everyone. One of the first pieces of advice I'm going to give you is to not rush to book your test. A lot of people came up to me when I was learning and said, oh, just get your test booked, and you've got a set benchmark for when you're going to be doing it, and you just get it done. Nah. I'd say you've got to be completely comfortable with driving before you think about booking your test, because if you're worried about certain things whilst driving on the test, that's going to make you really nervous. I mean, you're going to be nervous anyway, that's completely natural, but if, say, you're unsure about certain techniques, you're struggling with the clutch, you're struggling with hill starts, video plug, go watch the hill start video. If you're struggling with certain things, get them down before you even consider booking your test. And spend as much time as you can looking around on the internet and looking at all sorts of different advice videos. Don't just stick to one, don't just stick to mine. Go around and have a look at others and piece the different bits of advice together, because a lot of different people will have a lot of different tips. When you're learning to drive as well, I'd say you should complement learning to drive with a professional instructor alongside just going for casual drives with your parents. You have to have someone over 21 in the car with you who has a full license. So try and find someone who will come out and drive with you. Get as much experience with different people as you can as well. Like I've been saying with the videos, different people have different tips and you have to piece it all together. You can't just take one person's advice verbatim as the way to go. That includes my video. Again, go out and search other bits of advice. It is recommended. I would say go with a professional. When I was learning to drive, I took a 3-day intensive driving course before my test. So I'd had driving experience before that. I had some kind of bad experiences with instructors. So I took a 3-day intensive course, and it was 3 days of solid driving just around the local area, around the test area, and then straight in to the driving test after those 3 days was over. Felt like I was just driving and then a different person got in the car and, you know, within half an hour passed the test. So I think that's one of the ways to go, and that's something I definitely recommend. If you take lessons spaced apart, you will tend to forget things. That applies to musical instruments, everything. So if you can have a lot of intensive time learning, that will do you a lot of good. One thing I definitely recommend is knowing the very basics of the car you are going to be driving on the test. You might be learning in one car, and then on the test you're going to be driving a Ford Fiesta, a Renault Clio, a Seat Ibiza, okay? Know the basics of that car. So know when you look under the hood where to check the oil, how to check the windscreen washer fluid, and very, very basic stuff. The show me tell me questions, just make sure you know where your oil dipstick is, where to check your coolant level, your brake fluid, and your washer fluid as well. Keep in mind that they're going to be different on your car depending on what you have. So check those, make sure you know what they are, and you will be fine. So no silly things like the minimum tread depth is 1.6 millimeters, and that if you're going to check your lights, say your brake lights, you're going to need someone else to do it. So you can get the examiner to go around the back of the car and you step on the brake pedal. Sometimes you need the ignition on to check your lights. And your horn, you have to be off-road. That sort of silly stuff. This will all be online too. I can go into more detail in another video, but that's basically all you'll need to know for that. It's very slightly different on each car, and if it catches you out on the day, you just want to make sure you know everything about the car you're going to be driving on the day, just to be sure and to take that off your mind. You don't want extra load, so you don't want to be fresh to the car. That works too with the clutch and the gearbox, everything like that. It is all slightly different on each car, so make sure you get used to the car you'll be driving on the test, as it'll just make you a lot more comfortable and make you feel more at home and that you know what you're doing. Something that's going to come up a little bit more through these videos is try to be very predictable with what you do when you're actually on the test. So, when you're going to make any movements, when you're going to be changing lanes, braking, accelerating, be very smooth, predictable, and let the examiner know through indicating, checking what you're going to be doing. The one thing examiners hate is unpredictability. That scares them, okay? So you want to make the instructor safe, make him feel at home, and that you are being very observant and knowing what you're doing, okay? If something dramatic happens on the test, like someone pulls out in front of you, you have to avoid someone, do it, you know? The examiner's going to give you top marks for avoiding someone. He's going to give you not very top marks for crashing into someone, you know? When you got to do things like changing lane, stopping to turn at a junction, make sure you're indicating, using your mirrors, and just do things smoothly and obviously. The thing. In the real world, you don't need to move your head to check the mirrors. It's just, you'll only need to move your head a tiny bit. But on the test, if you've got an examiner sitting next to you, you're going to have to make yourself obvious that you're checking things. Now, this sounds really strange, but moving your head to check the rearview mirror, moving your head to check the wing mirrors is something that will let your examiner who's looking at you see that you're checking. You know, you could be looking, but if you're just moving your eyes, sometimes it doesn't look like you are checking as much. Before you brake, before you turn, before you do anything significant, mirror checks, be obvious, okay? And make sure you see as well. Don't just turn your head and sort of point it in the vague direction of the mirror. Actually see what's behind you and see what's next to you. That's gonna help you out and stop you actually smacking into people. You don't want to be holding people up behind you, okay? That's one thing that the driving instructors will be looking at. So you don't want to crawl everywhere. You need to be going the best speed for the road conditions, which is most of the time the speed limit. If it's pissing it down, if it's raining really heavily, then you can knock a few miles an hour off the speed limit. That's fine. Slow down for big puddles, everything like that. If the conditions are fine, sit it on the speed limit and make sure you know how to identify the speed limits, okay? For example, on dual carriageways, if you've got a divider in the road with grass or a metal barrier, then it's going to be 70. But if there's no divider, then it's going to be 60. That sort of thing. Make sure you know how to identify the speed limits so you can be comfortable. So when you're getting up to the speed limit, just do it progressively. You know, you can use half your car's rev range absolutely fine. Be smooth with your gear changes, and drive how you normally would, you know. The only time you're going to start having problems is if your wheel's spinning, if you're scaring the examiner by accelerating in places that you wouldn't normally. So say if you're in a residential 30 or 20 mile an hour, if you accelerate really quickly in places like that, you're going to start scaring the examiner. So the only place you're really going to need to start really putting your foot down is for motorway, on-ramps, things like that. You know, places where you need to get to the speed limit to be safe. So one thing you don't really want to be doing is anything like that. Avoid any dramatic movements unless you're just avoiding something that could cause a crash. So, something else as well is on the driving test, something unusual could happen. If you're going to do anything unusual, explain what it is you're going to do to the examiner and why you're doing it. If you're going to have to be unusual, then you don't want to suddenly scare the examiner with it. Say you need to make a sharp turn, or you need to go to the other side of the road, or something, just something weird. Just explain. They will understand if they know why you're doing it, that you're going to do it as well. So don't just suddenly jump them with it, suddenly end up on the other side of the road because something's happening. Explain, and most of the time they're going to understand, because they would have to do that in the real world as well. You're not just copying from the books. You could be a safe driver, even in unusual situations, will put you very highly up in their books. One thing that you should keep in mind is that you can make mistakes on the test. That is absolutely fine. It's all about how you recover from those mistakes. If you make a mistake such as stalling the car, it's all about how you recover from that mistake. You're going to make mistakes in the real world, you're going to stall it, you're going to do all sorts of things. The instructors and the examiners know this. If you recover from a mistake by panicking, by rushing things, stalling it again, by being dangerous, pulling out in front of people, then that is going to strike you out immediately. The one thing you want to do is show that you can recover from mistakes smoothly and without panicking. Say, if you stall it on a hill start or before a roundabout, relax, take the car out of gear, put the clutch in, restart the car, and then restart whatever you were going to do. Make another check, keep your head, and keep calm. If you've made that mistake, that might get you a minor if you've just stalled the car. Oh well, a minor's a minor, you know. You can get 14 of those on a test without failing it. So, if you then recover calmly, the instructor's more likely going to be impressed rather than anything else. The examiner's going to know that if you did that in the real world, you wouldn't then panic and smack into the car in front of you or behind you. You would just recover, and you're going to get better at it as you practice in the real world. One tip that is up to you completely is not telling friends or any more family than you have to that you're going to be taking your driving test. This is something that will take a lot of pressure off you, because if you fail it, then hell, you rebook it, you try it again, and then you can just jump your friends saying you passed, and there's going to be no better reaction than that. No, when I was taking my driving test, I had a lot of people put a lot of expectation on me, and a couple of more of my friends were like that too, because they'd done a lot of go-karting, a lot of track driving, and driving before they'd even thought about taking their driving test. So if you can avoid that pressure, that is definitely something off your mind, and it will make it a hell of a lot easier for you and a lot less stressful too. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching the video today. I hope these tips helped you out. If they did, let me know in the comments, like and subscribe to the channel for more. If you would like more tips, let me know as well. And if you have any of your own tips for the channel, drop them in the comments, as I'm sure people will be really interested to see them. Thank you for watching, drive safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.